Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hey, so glad you're with us on Life Support, where we tell stories to help people understand that wherever you are in life, Jesus can be there with you and is there just for asking, and he can change lives, and that's what he does regularly. And so we want you to know that there's always hope. And someone here to help us today is Bailey Seiler, who is the Vice President of Operations and Curriculum Developer for Five Stone Media, which is one of our sponsors, of course. You can always watch a video version of this podcast on their website at fivestonemedia.com. And Lee, it's so good to have you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for driving down all the way from the Northland today.
Yes.
From the Princeton area.
The Cambridge
area.
Yeah.
Princeton, Cambridge is kind of the same city,
similar.
isn't it?
Yeah,
very similar. Yes. Northern. In Minnesota, it's really funny because you'll say, hey, where were you this weekend? And everybody just goes, up north.
Up north.
Which is like a vast area if you're not from Minnesota.
It's all relative,
It's all relative.
I live up north.
That could be 5 miles north, or it could be 500 miles up north. All right, so we were talking last time you were with us about all of the things that Five Stone has done to help, from trauma to mental health. Your newest curriculum coming out is Exploring Your Recovery. But what you really want to do is help churches, right? You're trying to equip the church to reach people in these difficult areas. Tell me about that and how that vision came to be.
Correct. So organizationally, years ago, my boss and friend Steve heard the story of a gang leader here in Minnesota, John Turnipseed, and I thought a group of men, 5 men eventually, who were the Five Stones of Five Stone Media, decided they needed to tell this guy's story because this guy's story could help change lives, and it has. Mm-hmm. So John's story turned into films and into a curriculum for incarcerated people,
and a book,
and a book.
Mm-hmm.
And then a women's curriculum for women incarcerated, and all in an effort to help people going through something that none of us would ever know how to deal with, being incarcerated, being judged for something that we've done, and having that define our life for a time at least, if not for the rest of our lives. So that's sort of the start of Five Stone Media, is that telling that story and creating that curriculum and helping using stories of other people, including John Turnipseed, but other people too, men and women who went through similar circumstances. And we use video to tell those stories to help change lives. And one thing that we found is that there are some missing elements. And before we can go on and build a new life, we have to at least start healing from the past. And before we can heal, we have to believe that healing is possible. So we have to have hope. And so we tell these stories in order to communicate that hope, so that people can see, people who are in a hopeless situation can see that there is a way out, that someone has done this, someone has figured this out. And through that hope, they can find a way to change and transform their lives. We think that God's design for that is reflected in Christ and the way Christ sits in our lives. That oftentimes what's missing is a relationship with Christ and understanding that the sort of the hope that He brings to our world. And that hope that's available to everyone when it's missing. So we do that. Personally, the way that looked in my life was I went through addiction. I was a believer growing up, and I went through alcohol addiction for a number of years. And I, previously on this podcast, I told my story. I'm not going to tell my story again. People can look it up. I don't really have any secrets about my past. So it's available a lot of places. But basically, my life melted down through, most of it my fault, bad choices I made. But I felt stuck. I was utterly hopeless. I didn't think that there was a way to go forward in life. I just couldn't see a future. Because I had disconnected from God, from my faith, I had disconnected and isolated myself from almost everybody in my life, burned so many bridges, and ruined our family's life financially, and just all kinds of terrible, terrible things down in this pit, this dark pit. I could never figure out how I was going to get out of it. And of course, I struggled for years to try to get myself out of it, because I thought that's what you do. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, boy. Get yourself out of this problem.
It's America.
Yeah, that's America. That's just not the way it works, and it's not God's design. It never was. There's a reason that He put us here together. I think of, if we were on a cruise ship and cruising along the Caribbean, and we looked over the edge of the cruise ship and we saw someone out there flailing in the water. We know they're drowning, and if someone doesn't do something about it, that person's gone.
Yeah.
I think of God up there on that cruise ship, and He's looking down at us, and we're all down here flailing.
Yeah.
And what's His answer for us flailing down here? He has sent us each other as life preservers, as an answer to our struggles. And oftentimes we walk along through life, and I did this for years in my addiction, thinking I had to deal with this. I couldn't burden someone else with this. No one else has an answer for this. I knew I needed help, but I didn't know where to go, where to look for that. So I was flailing along in my addiction silently, and not letting anyone else in. And I just know that if I would have years earlier asked for help, reached out for help, asked God, He would have directed me to the right place.
But shame is a powerful, powerful thing in all of our lives. And we suffer alone, I think, largely due to shame.
Yeah.
It's hard to have someone look at us in a way that is judgmental, or we think they're going to.
Yeah.
Very rarely do they, but we always think they're going to.
Yeah, right.
And to admit that we're not perfect. I think it goes back to the garden when Satan went to Adam and Eve and said, like, you can be like God. You don't need anyone else. And I can give you that. And that's when shame came into the world. He went looking for Adam, and all of a sudden, Adam's tossing it over. It's the woman you gave me, and then Eve's saying it's the serpent. It's his fault, and they're all cowering. And that's, I think, what we do. We cower in fear because we don't want to be found out.
Yeah.
We don't want to take our mask off.
Yeah.
Because our mask protects us. Our mask is our reputation. Our mask is how we want people to see us. Not even necessarily how they really do.
Right.
It's how we want them to.
Well, man, last week on the show we talked about the lies that people believe about each other and about themselves. And one of those lies is that no one else has these problems.
Yeah.
And everyone has problems. Everyone's got struggles.
Yeah.
And if we were all open about it, life would be a lot more comfortable, because we could really share authentically about who we are and be vulnerable, and then live in God's design for each other.
Well, the early church, I think they had problems too, and they came together and they prayed together, ate together, did everything together. And I'm guessing there were some really good conversations had at the table there. You've got a new curriculum coming out called Exploring Your Recovery. And how does that deal with some of the issues that we've just discussed?
Well, one of the big things that we deal with in Exploring Your Recovery, there are 6 topics that we recover, and these are all kind of uncomfortable things that we get to talk about. And one of the almost universal things in addiction or recovery is guilt and shame. We just talked about. So that's one of the topics we go through, because it is guilt and shame preoccupies so many people in recovery, and it keeps people in addiction so much, because I have, if I get to the depths of my addiction, if I think back to that, I feel so bad about everything and about myself, about the way I've affected my family, my friends, that the easiest solution for me is just to climb back in the bottle. And that bottle's a tool, and it helps me hide from my shame and guilt and everything else. So that's one of the topics. So these topics are, the curriculum is designed to cover some topics that aren't really covered too much in other recovery kinds of curriculum or environments, things like the 12 steps or Celebrate Recovery, the 8 principles of recovery, lots and lots of other kinds of recovery curriculum and groups out there. But one of the things that's almost universally missing is any discussion about mental health. And I understand a lot of people are afraid to talk about mental health stuff because it's in the purview of professionals, of doctors, of therapists, of counselors, or in the purview of pastors and ministry leaders. Well, there is, you talk about the early church, there is a plan for all this stuff in the Bible. And part of that plan is let's support each other, let's live together, not physically. I don't want to live with you, Paul. I'm sorry, but
I'm hurt by that. But I'm glad that you're honest with me.
Well, honesty is a great policy with pastors, I've found. Oh, you distracted me. I can't remember where I was.
Well, you're the one who brought it up, so I think you have to pay the price.
I do. So one of the things that's really missing in many of those recovery curriculum is any discussion of mental health and how we rebuild that, because there's a lot of destruction that goes into mental health and to our mental health when it comes to addiction. As we destroy our lives, we isolate, we lose our careers, we lose money, we hurt other people. That takes a toll on our mental health. And it is almost impossible to get that point in addiction and not have some level of anxiety, depression, ADHD. Anger is almost universal thing with people. We're angry at the world for dealing us this hand. The world is angry at us. Our family's angry at us for costing all this money or for abandoning us or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of anger that's in the addiction world, and so anxiety, depression, anger, ADHD, empathy, and forgiveness is another thing too. Now, some of the 12 steps deals a little bit with forgiveness and empathy, but there's a lot of focus on the self in the recovery world, which is as it should be because we're rebuilding ourselves. Mm-hmm. But at some point we have to turn to the world and deal with the world again. And so we have to deal with forgiveness. And yes, we have to forgive ourselves, but we have to forgive other people too, because a lot of people who have substance use disorder or addiction have been harmed in the past, big time, and very painful ways. And it's hard to think of forgiving some of those things. You think of abuse or abandonment or that kind of thing. That's really hard stuff to forgive. So we need to talk about that. And so we dive a little bit deeper in this curriculum into empathy and forgiveness than in others. As I said, guilt and shame. And then the final of the 6 topics is gratitude. And people often talk about gratitude early in addiction. If I walk into an AA room, a Celebrate Recovery room, one of the first things that anyone's going to tell me to do, the very first thing my first sponsor ever told me to do, old Jim we called him, and he was he looked like he fell off of a charm bracelet. He was just this little old guy, maybe 80-something years old, and he'd been around the block, and he knew everything. And he said, "Lee, I want you to every day write down something you're grateful for. Make a list." And then he would give me homework. The next time I came back to the meeting, I had to show him the things I was grateful for. And personally, I started out by, I faked my way through it, really. I'm grateful for the blue sunny sky. I'm grateful for birds and puppies and, all kinds of it. Because I really wasn't grateful for much. I had lost a vast amount of money. I had destroyed all my relationships. I lost my position, my business. There's all kinds of stuff. The tax man's knocking on my door. They're about to take my house away. What do I have to be grateful for? Mm-hmm. I don't have anything left anymore. But that exercise that many people do, I would say most people do it as they enter recovery. It's a great tool early in recovery, but then a lot of people put it down and we forget to be grateful. And I don't care. Maybe you've never been in addiction, and you're just what we call in the addiction world, we call you a normie. If you're a normie, when was the last time you sat down and wrote down a list of things that you're grateful for? It really helps change your mindset. Mm-hmm. And so we take people in one of our groups back into that, and we talk about gratitude. And it really is encouraging and helpful because it sends you away from that group with a different attitude. Oh yeah, I've got all this stuff going for me now. So I can describe all of those 6 topics that we deal with in Exploring Your Recovery. And by the way, you can find that at LifeSupportResources.org. That's the website where our library of resources lives, and all of those resources are free. So we offer resources on our digital resources on our website for free for ministry. So if you're doing ministry, recovery ministry, we want you to have this, and we'll even help you know how to use it. We do facilitator training, free facilitator training for all of our curriculum. So if there's someone out there listening to this and you want to use this curriculum, we want you to have it. So just shoot us a contact. I'm Lee at 5 Stone Media. Spell it out, 5stonemedia.com. And we'll be happy to help you. You can contact us through the website also. But each of these 6 topics is presented over 2 sessions. So, for instance, for ADHD, people will show up just like a regular recovery group, so this can be integrated into any existing recovery group or ministry. People show up and watch a 10-minute, 5-minute video, a very short video on the topic, and then there's a discussion guide that just leads the group through a discussion of that topic. The next time you come back, maybe it's a week later, maybe it's a month later, you come back, you watch another video, a second video on that topic, have another discussion, and that topic is done. And then the next week we move on to another topic. We've designed this so it can be modular, so you can run it for 12 weeks straight, go through the 6 topics in 12 weeks, or you can do one topic a month, or you can do one topic every 6 months, however it fits into your ministry. So people will use this as kind of a break from their ministry sometimes, and they'll just plug in one of our topic meetings in place of one of the steps, for instance, that kind of thing.
Well, you have a lot to offer there. That's great.
It's well, from experience, we've I've seen what works and what doesn't work, and so we've kind of tweaked. We did pilot this at a couple different locations at big churches and at a reentry center in Minneapolis, and we made some changes. But all of our curriculum, like Exploring Your Recovery, all of our curriculum is video-based. So it starts with video, and those videos are always real people telling their stories.
And well done.
And
very professional and very good.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So video-based, and then we have a very simple discussion guide, and we like to make these curriculum really user-friendly so anyone can facilitate them. Some of the little more complicated things, we spend the time to train people how to facilitate. We have live in-person facilitator trainings, and for some of our curriculum, we've got virtual facilitator trainings. So people in Georgia, for instance, who are learning now how to use one of our curriculum, and we can do that all over the country or all over the world, for that matter.
How would the church change if people embraced these different areas and said, we're going to make a difference? How would America change? It would be drastic, wouldn't it?
Wow, it would look very different, I think. It's a sad commentary. It would look very different. It would actually, I think, look like what the church is supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. There are churches that know this and that get it, a lot of them.
Well, there's a church called Ridgewood Church in
where is that?
Minnetonka, Minnesota, which is fabulous.
Yeah, it's good.
Very caring.
Yeah, 101 on Ridgewood Road.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. You've heard of it. Good.
Yeah. Well, I honestly think most churches get this. I think that most churches also, though, are really overwhelmed.
Yep.
Under-resourced and overwhelmed.
Yep.
And so we try to help on both aspects of that. Because we know that the pastors and ministry leaders are overwhelmed, and so we want to put resource in their hands, and then we don't charge for them. So we know churches are stretched right now these days because they're trying to help a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons all of our resources are free. We really felt convicted by the fact that God has given us this gift of a little bit of talent and the ability to do this kind of work. Why are we charging people for his gift? So we're giving things away, and we trust God for his provision to support us too. So we have churches that come alongside and partner us and provide funding for all this curriculum.
If someone's listening right now and they would like to make a donation to Five Stone, how can they do that?
Well, first of all, we would really appreciate it, and we would love it. You can go to fivestonemedia.com. There's a donate button right on the top of the page, and or LifeSupportResources.org. You can get there too, and we would love to have any financial support, but also the support of your prayers. Greatly appreciated. And we do have some volunteer opportunities. If you're in our local area, we have some volunteer opportunities available too. We'd love to talk to you about those. Yeah. Very
good. Well, thanks for filling us in. You're doing a great work, and the things you're involved with are really, really important. And there's not a lot of people doing this kind of thing. And so you're cutting new ground too, which is exciting, but I'm sure it's difficult as well.
It is exciting, and it's really rewarding. It's just amazing to see change happen.
Well, and to see how your life has changed as a model of what can really happen.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that.
Sure. Thanks, Paul.